Darkcast Network, indie pods with a dark side.
Hi, I'm Keely, host of Misty Mysteries. I found the cutest little online shop on Etsy called Wick of the Wood. Wick of the Wood specializes in unique accent candles with an inventory that consists of one-of-a-kind handmade candles that fit every variety of spaces and aesthetics. Wick of the Wood always have their eye out for new candle molds, thrifted containers, and other inspirations. The idea that everyone can have a candle that fits whatever quirky space they need inspires Wick of the Wood to think outside of the candle mold and make any idea you might have a reality. Since she was just a little girl, the owner has always dreamt of making a little shop where she could sell homemade items. Under the watchful eye of her dog, the owner lovingly hand makes each item, packages them, and mails them out to you from Seattle, Washington. And you don't have to take it from me. Here's some testimonials from several Wick of the Wood customers. Susie, 5 stars. I've ordered from this shop and every time it's an amazing experience. Everything smells amazing and the packaging is always so cute and functional. This is my favorite candle shop. Tandra also gives Wick of the Woods 5 stars. These are so cool. I only burnt 3 so I could keep 1 for show. LOL. Another 5 stars from Dior, who says, the seller is so kind, beautifully packaged. The candles smell and look amazing. Bought it for my bestie and she loves it. Thank you. And thank you for the freebies too. Those are just a few of the amazing reviews of Wick of the Wood. You can check out Wick of the Wood at www.etsy.com/shop/Wick of the Wood. Follow Wick of the Wood on Twitter at Wick of the Wood.
Hello, I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
We're the husband and wife team behind the True Crime Podcast, And Then They Were Gone.
We're a weekly show that covers unsolved missing persons cases. These are cases that you, the listener, can have an impact on.
That's right. Each week, we bring you a new case of someone who has gone missing and needs their story told. Some of the people you may have heard of, like Kristen Smart or Braceless Pisa. But we also bring you missing people of color and other cases that haven't gotten the mainstream attention that they deserve. We cover the missing person's life and delve into the investigation and media coverage.
One thing that we've learned in the nearly 2 years of doing this podcast is that a lot of these cases could be solved if pressure was put on the investigative agencies to do more. Our hope is that by getting these stories out there, you'll help us put that pressure on them.
So come along with us as we tell these stories, and maybe you hold the key to bringing someone home. And Then They Were Gone is a proud member of the Darkcast Network and Spreaker Prime. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or your favorite podcast app.
Hey there, this is my disclaimer. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm a good shot of vodka for some. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. I'm your host, Lesbo Extraordinaire CJ. I hope you're all well and that you've been productive in your lives. I'm going to breeze quickly through housekeeping and then get into some updates on cases I've covered in the past. Find me on the socials as Rainbow Crimes and Darkcast Network, just about everywhere. Please take a moment to rate and review Darkcast Network shows on iTunes, Spotify, and Good Pods, or wherever you may listen that allows you to rate and review. It helps our shows gain traction and be seen. Also, if you aren't sure what shows are with Darkcast, go to darkcastnetwork.com. And you can see all the incredible shows with the network. I'm so proud of each and every one of our shows and how far we've come. Meet me in Austin, Texas in August for the True Crime Paranormal Festival. It'll be towards the end of August and I can't wait. Go to True Crime Paranormal Festival website for details and type in the word BEYOND, BEYOND, for 15% off your ticket. And lastly, please consider joining my Patreon. As a patron, you'll get ad-free early release episodes, a unicorn named in your honor, an extra Patreon exclusive episode at the end of every month as we take our unicorns for a ride, and I tell you a story that I've not shared here on the regular show. And I'll send you some extra goodies if you provide me your mailing address. Okay, let's put the broom away and get ready for some true crime updates. I received a message on my podcasting host, that would be Spreaker. And I replied back to it, but I don't know if the person who sent me the message received my message back. The message was from a woman in regards to the murder of Felicia Dorman's episode that aired March 27th of this year. She claimed to be good friends with Felicia, and she told me that her ex-boyfriend had supplied acid. It was some really strong drugged acid, too, to Felicia's new wife, Laura Bluestein. I'm not sure if you remember, but a fight that led to Felicia's murder broke out between Felicia and Laura, and it was apparently over some food Felicia had left out on a kitchen counter, and then the food had attracted ants. And Laura was pissed off about the ants, and that's what started the whole fight and Laura's aggression towards Felicia. Well, the woman who messaged me said that the acid was so strong, it's possible the ants were in Laura's mind. Or there could have been a few ants, and they could have appeared gigantic or a crazy amount of them. So basically, Laura could have been tripping on the acid, and that made the ant situation 1,000 times worse. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. It's no excuse for Laura to have murdered her new bride, Felicia, but it might offer a little insight into what might have happened. Next, in a True Crime Quickie, I covered the cases of 33-year-old John Umberger, who was a political consultant, and 25-year-old Julio Ramirez, who was a social worker. This happened not too long ago, and there's still a lot of ongoing stuff with it. But they were gay men who were murdered in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. Media reported that they were abducted by gang members after they left gay nightclubs, and that the gang members drugged them, killed them, and drained their bank accounts. Well, since I brought that case to your attention, there have been arrests for John and Julio's murders. 34-year-old Robert DeMeo, 30-year-old Jacob Barroso, and 35-year-old Jaquan Hamilton were arrested and charged with murder, robbery, and grand larceny in the connection of the murders of John and Julio. And frankly, I'm not sure why they weren't slapped with kidnapping too. But I think if they are found guilty of murder charges, they'll most likely be hit hard with their sentences. Multiple drugs were found in both of the victims' systems, including fentanyl, lidocaine, and cocaine. Two other men, Andre Butts and Shane Hoskins, were arraigned on felony larceny and identity theft in relation to the case as well. So 5 men have been arrested in connection with these murders. I guess they really were a little gang. Gary Ruby was the murdered man on the Hawaiian island of Oahu, and I covered his case in my episode titled Blue Hawaii. His alleged killer was also his much younger lover, Juan Barron. He still has not went to trial yet. It's been postponed several times for prosecution to get discovery documents to the defense team. Juan's murder trial is set again for next month, May of 2023. Hopefully no more delays will take place and some unicorn justice for Gary Ruby will happen. 23-year-old Lindo Seeley of South Africa is a true crime quickie case I covered. He was the LGBTQ activist and up-and-coming singer who was stabbed by a man who was riding in a taxi. He saw Lindo enter a butcher shop, and he had the taxi driver stop. The man then jumped out, followed Lindo into the butcher shop, grabbed a knife, and stabbed Lindo 21 times, leaving the knife in Lindo's eye. Lindo's killer finally went to trial. His defense was that he believed Lindo had drugged and raped him at a New Year's Eve gathering that he attended. The judge dismissed this as the defense couldn't prove the killer was ever raped, and that's because it was never reported to police. The judge also said that the prosecution couldn't prove Lindo's murder was premeditated. Ultimately, the judge decided Lindo's killer was guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. A missing but not forgotten 14-year-old from Claremore, Oklahoma, Kurt Lewis. Well, this is kind of old, but he's been found safe. Those are the kind of updates that are always nice to hear. And I think we'll end the updates on that note and get into this episode's case. This story is filled with hate oozing out of every pore. And although it was classified and tried as a hate crime, I believe the intent behind the hate wasn't really directed at the victim. It seemed to be more self-hate within the perpetrator. But that self-hate left an innocent man dead. Christopher Street is the oldest street the West Village has in New York City. It was the home of the Stonewall riots, once liberating LGBTQ people from having to hide from police, tucked away in seedy bars if they wanted a night out of fun with like-minded individuals. Today, it's supposedly a safe place for people of the LGBTQ community to walk around free of hatred and bias. The streets are lined with LGBTQ-friendly businesses and million-dollar apartments. Gay men or women walking down the street are holding hands, and it's a normal sight. Even in 2013, things look similar to what they do today in that area. And May 17th to 18th of 2013, that's where our story's headed. Nearly 10 years ago, 32-year-old Mark Carson was a gay black man on a night out with his friend Danny Robinson. Now, Danny could have been a romantic partner. However, I've not seen anything to verify their relationship was anything other than friends. It was a few minutes until midnight, and they were near a 99-cent fresh pizza restaurant that was still open for business. And even though it was a Sunday night, I feel like the heart of New York City just doesn't sleep. 36-year-old Manhattan native Elliot Morales, he was also out and about, and he was with a couple of his male friends. Elliot had tipped back a few too many drinks, it appeared. It would also seem when Elliot was drunk that night, he was a mean and sloppy drunk. Elliot, who was a self-proclaimed bisexual man, saw Mark and Danny as they were walking past the pizza restaurant. Elliot shouted at the two men, "Hey, are you gay wrestlers?" And then he proceeded to call the men faggots. If you're from the New York City area, this would have been near 6th Avenue and 8th Street. Elliot then yelled at the two gay men, "Hey, you want to die here?" Both Mark and Danny turn around and they walk back to the front of the pizza restaurant where Elliot is shouting at them from. There is surveillance footage of the whole initial encounter, but it is minus the audio. It's important also to note on the film, Mark and Danny were not holding hands or doing anything that would even lead anyone to believe that they were gay. Both had on baseball hats, knee-length shorts and tank tops. Nothing flamboyant about that. But you really can't see much going on other than Mark and Danny turning around, exchanging words with Elliot. Elliot seems to slip around Mark and Danny, and then he starts walking away. Mark and Danny follow him. The rest of what happened is not on camera. As Mark and Danny are following Elliot, Elliot dips into an alleyway. Mark and Danny turn the corner into the alley, and that's when Elliot pulls out a .38 caliber pistol and he shoots Mark in his face. Elliot then takes off running. A nearby police officer, Henry Hewitt, heard the shot, and he sees Elliot running and he gives chase on foot. At West 3rd Street, Elliot fumbles with his gun as he sees Officer Henry coming at him. Officer Henry takes this opportunity to tackle Elliot. Thankfully, Elliot's a small man, and the officer disarms him. The officer then calls for backup and has Elliot pinned to the ground. As backup arrives, Elliot is still pinned to the ground and he sounds like a fucking crazy man. There were some witnesses standing around taking video of the situation, and another officer was recording the audio of him. I'd like to share the audio while he was still on the ground.
Fucking shot him dead. Dying nonsense dead, doctor. They don't teach you that in the academy, right? What the fuck possessed him to do what he did?
If the audio was a little hard to understand, here are the words that came from Elliot's mouth. I fucking shot him dead. Diagnosis dead, doctor. They don't teach you that in the academy, right? And then Elliot proceeds to lick the sidewalk over and over. He tries to raise his head to smash it into the pavement, but the cops prevent him from doing so. Elliot goes on to tell the police, I shot him dead. He deserved it. He was acting tough in front of his bitch. Meanwhile, Mark was rushed to the nearest hospital and pronounced dead. Elliot was arrested for second-degree murder with a hate crime enhancement for his gay slurs. He was also charged with weapons possession and menacing an officer. In 2016, at Elliot's trial, wouldn't you know this little cocky son of a bitch decided to represent himself? The night of Mark's murder, Elliot looked scruffy. He was wearing an oversized gray hoodie and baggy basketball shorts. He kind of looked unkempt, or maybe like a 13-year-old boy. The pictures of him at his trial, he's wearing reading glasses, a button-down shirt, a tie, a fitted jacket, and his hair is neatly slicked back. He looks like what we might picture a TV show librarian to look like, or maybe even a high school counselor. The prosecution's arguments were that Elliot saw Mark and Danny, and he was jealous of these two gay men who were able to live their lives out in public. Elliot first taunted and provoked Mark and Danny as a homophobic attack. Elliot argued back that he's bisexual. How could he possibly be homophobic? And then he produced his star witness, his transgender ex-lover. She took the stand and testified that her and Elliot had been having sexual relations with one another on and off for about 10 years. She said she had placed an ad on a dating site back then, and the headline was clearly labeled, Trans Woman Seeks Man. And Elliot answered. And when Elliot was cross-examining Danny, Elliot told the courtroom Mark and Danny should have ignored his taunts and walked away. He blamed Mark and Danny for the altercation that led to Mark's death. Prosecution had a number of witnesses, including a business owner who testified Elliot had been by his business earlier in the evening. Elliot yelled at his staff and called them gay slurs. Then he pissed all over the storefront window. Others were there as witnesses to how drunk and out of line Elliot's behavior was that night, all leading up to Mark's murder. Closing arguments by the prosecution claimed that Elliot is an angry, small man whose deep-seated hatred for gay men surfaced that night. Mark Carson was nothing to the defendant but a subhuman faggot. It was not alcohol that led Elliot to kill Mark Carson. Elliot was not justified in killing Mark Carson. It was irrational hate. In Elliot's closing argument, he cried. He sobbingly told the jurors he was not a bigot of any type, and charging him with a hate crime was ridiculous. After the closing arguments, the jurors left the courtroom. They deliberated, and when they came back into the courtroom, they produced to the judge a guilty verdict for Elliot Morales. At Elliot's sentencing, the judge equated Elliot's behavior to that of the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooter, which incidentally occurred the same year as Elliot's trial. The judge said the two crimes were parallel in the fact that both revealed hate, self-loathing, fear, and death. The judge went on to tell Elliot he is a monster, and that his is a legacy of death and fear, nothing more, nothing less. And after that, the judge sentenced Elliot to 40 years of incarceration. Rest in power, Mark. Our True Crime Quickie this episode comes to us from South Africa in 2021. The morning of April 5th, 2021 in Durban, the family of a man named Sphamandla Khoza awoke to find his shoes neatly sitting outside their front door. Family members followed the blood trail from the shoes at the front of their home to a ditch near a school. In that ditch is where they found the body of their beloved 34-year-old Sphamandla, whom they affectionately called Spa. Spa was an openly gay South African black man. He had a life partner who was not with him the night he was murdered. Incidentally, Spa's murder took place the day after Lindo Seeley's killer was sentenced. We know from past cases the LGBTQ+ community is not very well accepted in this country. But honestly, it's getting to the point where we're not being well received in any country. I find myself constantly wondering, how do we safely live our truths in this world? Especially since we all seem to be openly targeted for being who we are. And it's not just homophobic citizens attacking us, but police and lawmakers as well. The night of April 4th, Spa was at a party with his cousin and some other guys. Some of these guys might have been neighbors or childhood friends. The articles about Spa's death don't make it extremely clear. What is clear is that Spa was beaten and stabbed to death. His throat was slit. His family believes it's a hate crime due to him being openly gay. One of the men at the party got into an altercation with Spa over not sharing his beer with him because Spa was gay. Slurs were hurled at Spa by a number of men that night. Spa was being humiliated in what was supposed to be a night of fun. The cousin who was with Spa that night told media that when Spa was a child, he commanded attention. And he did it through his infectious laugh and his wacky dance moves. He said Spa always managed to get all the kids he hung out with in trouble, because Spa dared to go to places that adults said that they shouldn't. Spa was the leader of the pack in many ways. A few days after Spa's murder, family and friends gathered for a candlelight vigil. Along with their candles, they carried pride flags and walked through the neighborhood. They ended at the ditch that he was found in. Spa's body was laid to rest a few days later. I think the only upside to this story is that a man was arrested for suspicion of being Spa's killer. Tando Magenji walked into the police station a day later, and he turned himself in to the police as Spa's killer. The court ruled not to release Tando on bail while he awaits trial. But Tando stated, "I'm not going to run from the court proceedings. I handed myself over to the police, haven't I?" But the no bail rule stayed in place. Tando's had several meetings in court, but I have not seen if a decision of guilt or innocence has arisen. If he confessed, I imagine it will be a decision of guilt, and he will be sentenced as such. If you're from South Africa and you've heard more on the case, please reach out and let me know. Because this did happen a couple of years ago, I would think that he would have been sentenced by now. Rest in power, Spa. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. You matter. And remember, it's not a crime to be gay. Unless you're a murderer.